When it comes to what's going on in LA, this is not necessarily about immigration in any form. This is mainly about due process. That's it. And what I mean is, if you have someone, which is our law says if a person from another country is coming to our border and they are seeking asylum, it is up to us to adjudicate that, to give that person due process, to let them go through our courts and see if what they're saying is actually factual and true, and then either let them into the country or dismiss them from the country. That's our due process. That's the law. And in this country, we have a rule of law, not a rule of men, not a rule of people, not a rule of political parties. It's about the rule of law. Law reigns supreme over everything and everybody. And if you don't like the freaking law, change the law. Trump don't give a damn about the law. And he proved it with this riot. Now, let me tell you about riots. I am all for standing up and publicly protesting. Your government, your officials, whatever it is, I'm all for people protesting. When you go out there and you started vandalizing buildings, you start trying to burn stuff down, you're throwing rocks at the police officers, you're doing stupid shit like that, you should be arrested and tried to the full extent of the law. That's due process. But if you're out there peacefully protesting, to me, that's fine. Write your senators, write your congressmen, write your governors, write your state local officials. Do what you have to do to get the word out and get your voice heard. But you should not be out there vandalizing anything and harassing anybody. If you are doing that, you are violating the law and you should be tried to the full extent of that law. Also, what Trump did, when you invoke the National Guard or when you call up the National Guard to suppress a local state riot, you don't do it the way Donald Trump did it. You have to get in touch with the governor. You have to call the governor and say, hey, Gov, can you handle it? If the governor says he can handle it, then yes. If it gets out of hand, then the governor of that state requests support from the federal government. Then as the commander-in-chief, you activate that local National Guard to be on the federal payroll, and you say, hey, you guys are now federal troops. You go in, you suppress it. And if that don't work, then you send in the active duty forces. But what you don't do, just out of your own accord, decide, I'm going to say, fuck the governor and do it myself. What most people don't understand in this country, and what MAGA don't want to tell you is, every state in this country is a separate country that decided to unite. Russia, France, Spain, Japan, they are all states. That's why we have a Secretary of State. America is a collective of 50 separate states that voluntarily seceded some of their power to the federal government, but they're still their own separate country in a sense. So what you do is you get with that country's president. In this case, the governor. Let that governor figure it out. Because I'll be damned if you go into a Republican state and do the same thing. Because that state want to have what? Their state's rights. That's why we had the Civil War. It wasn't about slavery per se, and it wasn't about states' rights per se. It was about the South believing that they had a state right to own slaves. And they felt that with Lincoln coming in 1860, that he was going to restrict some of those rights, when all he said was he was going to contain it in the South and not let it spread to the West. Lincoln won the election. They tried to leave. I'm getting sidetracked. See, you don't piss off a person that knows and loves American history, or he will always get sidetracked. Let me get back. Let me focus. Again, Trump cannot just decide that he is going to bring in troops to suppress a riot when he has not spoken to that governor. Now, here's the constitutional crisis. If someone sues, and this goes up to the Supreme Court, what rule, what law, what statute, what part of the Constitution says if the governor doesn't agree with the president can usurp the governor and do what the hell he wants? Here's a side note. I believe this is all a plan by the MAGA administration to try to invoke martial law. And what better way to do it than to pit people against each other, ICE versus immigration. And everybody can rally around illegal immigration because everybody says illegal immigration is wrong. Donald Trump wants to enact martial law, and this is the best way to do it. What do you think?